So I just got finished watching Cobra Kai season 3 on Netflix and I loved it. There was just something about it that kept me coming back for more. And I tried really hard not to binge watch it all in like the space of 3 or 4 days, but I failed because it was that good. Cobra Kai is the modern continuation of the Karate Kid series from the 80s, so the set of movies. And for their time, I actually really enjoyed them, even though they weren't perfect movies, but they were quite fun to watch. Cobra Kai is set in the modern day and it stars the two main characters from the first film, from the first Karate Kid. And obviously they're still both rivals, being the old high school bully Johnny Lawrence and the sneaky but kind Karate Kid himself, Daniel LaRusso. Now I can tell you right now that I've been sleeping on this series for quite a few years, but I'm glad now after season 3 I've jumped on board and wow, it's so good. But the thing is, I was getting a nagging feeling like I've seen some similar aspects of this before. I got a very similar vibe to another show that I like to watch while I was watching Cobra Kai. To be honest, it actually felt like watching Naruto, and I really couldn't put my finger on it at first, but with enough time to think about it and deliberate about it, I think I know why now. In this video we're going to dive into how watching Cobra Kai feels like Naruto, and why I got a similar vibe from it, based on different elements of the show like character dynamics and character developments. Maybe even see if some of these dynamics are actually influenced or inspired by Naruto.
Motivate to motivate, spit till I suffocate, very quick to agitate, concentrate till I rate, I'm irate, in a state, my confidence is a trait, success is my motherfucking fate.
When I was watching Cobra Kai, I noticed stark similarities in dynamics and developments. Let's start with the main characters, Johnny and Daniel. Now, these guys' dynamic reminds me flat out of a older Naruto and Sasuke, okay? Why? Well, let's start with the way that they are depicted. In the first Karate Kid, Daniel is portrayed as the hero, even though a lot of us disagree now thanks to a certain YouTube video, and that Johnny is the villain. The similarity here is that Daniel is the underdog of the story, who's bullied by Johnny, who's a lot more powerful than the main character at the beginning. And if you remember in early Naruto, Sasuke was way more powerful than Naruto at the beginning, and their rivalry was built from there. Fast forward to the future, the two still hold grudges towards one another, in the case of Daniel and Johnny, and they're about similar and about equal in fighting ability, and above the rest of the main cast in terms of their power. This is kind of similar to the way that Naruto and Sasuke at the end of the series, the main two characters, are the most powerful and way above the rest of the cast. In regards to their fighting styles being Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do, I would say that there's a very yin-yang dynamic amongst them. Cobra Kai's style was very aggressive and offensive, looking to make that first strike, but Daniel's style, Miyagi-Do, is a lot less offensive, a lot less anger-driven, and a lot more defensive. I can actually compare this to the yin-yang release that Naruto and Sasuke get from the Sage of Six Paths towards the end of the series. So although Naruto and Sasuke's jutsus aren't completely reflective like in Cobra Kai, there is a clear parallel between the energy dynamic between Daniel and Johnny. I could go further and say how their fighting styles are very congruent with their personalities, as a lot of Cobra Kai's power in the style comes from channeling anger and frustration. And for a large chunk of Naruto Shippuden and Naruto, that's what Sasuke was driven by, his hatred. Whereas Daniel's style Miyagi-Do is more defensive and more put in place to protect others, as is it more focused. Are you sensing a theme here? It's hard to deny that it does feel similar, especially if you have watched the last arc of Naruto, being the fourth great ninja war. Within this arc, there are arguably more intriguing comparisons. Let's start with arguably the main antagonist of Naruto Shippuden being Madara Uchiha. Back in his day, Madara was considered to be evil by his methods. Madara took a merciless approach and bore a grudge against the Senju clan for the slaughter of his brothers of the Uchiha clan. This made him become more cynical and vengeful of the world, and led him to create the philosophy that he had. As a consequence, he was in a lot more of a disagreement with his former friend Hashirama, as he had a more compassionate way of dealing with things. Hashirama was driven by reducing bloodshed on both sides of the war. Since Madara was born into wartime, the argument could be made that he became evil based on his circumstances, because in the beginning all he really wanted was peace, as anyone really would. After experiencing his loss and grief, these became his primary motivators for becoming powerful. To prevent this from happening again, he was afraid of more loss. In the beginning, he was becoming a lot more like Hashirama, more idealistic, more caring, but because of the brutal age that he was in, he became a lot more jaded. Now let's compare this to John Kreese from Cobra Kai. He had noble intentions when he was a youngster, by trying to look out for others and be honorable. Unfortunately, this changed when he went into the Vietnam War, as he was deliberately told to abandon his humanity or he would be killed by the enemy soldiers. And subsequently, because of his mercy that he displayed, him and his war buddies ended up getting captured, and then they had to fight each other to the death. And this is where Kreese's developments as a character were cemented, and his philosophy. Before going to have to fight his commander, he's told by him that his girlfriend is dead and it's kill or be killed. The showdown ends by Kreese killing him by showing no mercy, and goes on to create Cobra Kai with the same mantra after the war. Principles of Cobra Kai being strike first, strike hard, and no mercy. And these are all clearly derived from his time in the war. And I'm strongly of the belief that Kreese wouldn't have become the person that he did if it wasn't for the Vietnam War. It changed his fundamental philosophy and made him hate karate masters like Mr. Miyagi that were more catered to self-defense and honor. Do you guys see a parallel here? Even in the way that Kreese and Madara were both supposed to be dead, they found a way to come back to life many years later. Kreese through actually faking his own death, and Madara via the Edo Tensei. Not only that, but both characters were quite self-righteous and relatively honorable at the beginning of their lives, but became more jaded and cold due to their experiences, and cultivated a mindset of no mercy and distaste for compassionate methods. We could go so far as to say that Cobra Kai is like the equivalent of the Uchiha clan, and Miyagi-Do is like that of the Senju based on the way their philosophies are. This actually adds to the idea that Johnny is like the Sasuke of the series, as he's like a younger Kreese and a newer generation of Cobra Kai, just as Sasuke is to the Uchiha clan. The same case could be made for Daniel, as he uses Mr. Miyagi's form of karate, like the Senju clan. I might be going off on one a little bit, but these comparisons are quite fun to make. Another character arc which really reminds me of a Naruto character is that of Eli Moskovitz, aka Hawk. He's actually my favorite character in the series of Cobra Kai due to his character arc and the transformation that he goes through. You see, Eli starts off as this character that is very low in confidence, very weak, and very insecure because of his cleft lip. And he's also autistic. But after joining the Cobra Kai dojo, he flips the script and gets renamed Hawk, and actually proceeds to become quite powerful within the first 3 seasons. The power actually ends up kind of corrupting him, as he ends up bullying other kids. This is made worse when John Kreese takes over the Cobra Kai dojo and further proceeds to brainwash Hawk into his own way of thinking. I use the word brainwash very intentionally, as I believe that Hawk was very vulnerable to influence. This is because of how quickly he flipped his insecurity around. He didn't really go through the long-winded process of changing in a natural way. Instead, he assumes a persona, and the cracks begin to show when he starts to question Kreese's methods. Hawk actually becomes so lost in this whole no mercy idea that he actually breaks his former best friend Dimitri's arm. However, in the finale of season 3, Hawk has a change of heart. After all the scenes around him start sinking in, he's become the thing that he hated. In response, he saves Dimitri and switches sides mid-fight. He apologizes to Dimitri and begins his redemption arc. Now you guys are probably wondering, like, which character is he making the comparison to? And of course that character is Obito Uchiha. Here's why. Like Eli, Obito was one of the least popular students among his peers and one of the weakest. After Obito's death, he meets Madara, who influences him and manipulates him by giving him a hope in a world of hopelessness and hell. In time, with powers granted to him by Madara, Obito becomes much stronger, but also much more sinister, to a point where he begins a war leading to the deaths of many ninja. Now I know that this is on a much bigger scale than Hawk, but by scaling Naruto's over-the-top action to Cobra Kai, I think it makes a lot of sense. He too gets completely lost and loses his way. Although, very similarly, towards the end of the story, Obito also has a change of heart and saves his former best friend Kakashi. My point here is that both characters were losers. They got stronger and ultimately corrupted by one older individual with a quite bent morality system, caused a lot of damage, had a change of heart, and saved their best friend in the end. I know that this is a very general comparison and it's like very broad, very big picture approach, not very detailed. But the way I see it, that's the vibe I kind of got from watching, and I think it's quite interesting. Let's wrap this up with my favourite part, the team up at the end of season 3. In one of the best finales ever, Johnny and Daniel team up to face Kreese and his dojo in the season to come. In the same vein, Naruto and Sasuke team up at the end of Naruto Shippuden to face Madara. Based on this, I wouldn't be surprised if Johnny and Daniel have a final fight at the end, after all this tournament saga is over, just like Naruto and Sasuke did, but who knows? The duo rivals from Cobra Kai and Naruto teamed up to face the bigger threat, the threat from the past. All in all, even small aspects in Cobra Kai like martial arts, the music, and even the episode length give me these shonen anime vibes. In addition, some of the character dynamics and character arcs reminded me of Naruto too. I could have gone even further and mentioned how Daniel going to Japan and picked up techniques from his dead master was very similar to the way that Naruto went to Mount Maiboku to learn Sage Mode after Jiraiya died. I also just love how that they share themes of underdogs and hard work. Overall, I don't know if these writers have watched Naruto or even were influenced by it at all, or even if they've watched the series at all. I enjoyed making the link and theorizing about the similarities that I noticed. This is my first video making something live action, and I feel like this is the perfect transition video for something along those lines. I'm still going to focus on the same sort of stuff, but I might dabble in these things here and there. Tell me if I should do more, or even if you enjoyed it, but for now, I've been Sir Lens, and have a great day.
Season, and I'm out for the kill. Adrenaline pumping through my veins, now I'm feeling the thrill. Call me Itachi, you won't see me. Tsukuyomi. Underneath